Sure. Thanks, Spiros. Thanks for inviting me to be with you again today. And it's lovely to chat to people in Greece and in Cyprus and in that part of the world, which I have to say, every time I've been to, I've thoroughly enjoyed. It's been wonderful. Yeah, I suppose the book has now been published by Wiley and is available on Amazon and all of those other places. The feedback so far has been fantastic, and that's really important because for anybody who's ever written a book, it can be a bit of a tortuous event, but it's really important because what we wanted to do was write a why to and a how to guide to become a healthy place to work, because many different people have different views as to what a healthy place to work actually is. And it was really important for us to actually put it down on paper in a really simple way so that it's there for everybody. It's not an academic book. It's very much full of stories as to what other organizations have done to create a healthy place to work. And I suppose from our point of view, one of the things we were seeing in workplaces all over the world was that they were challenged with lots of people issues. And that was everything from sort of talent and sort of how are we going to get talent into this organization? How are we going to attract people to come and work for us? How are we going to retain the people who are here? And how are we going to make sure that people are engaged and they perform and they're productive and they're creative and collaborative and all of those things that organizations want? And organizations, we clearly could tell, were struggling after COVID, after the pandemic. They were also sort of knowing that there was so many other things that they needed to be doing, like dealing with sustainability, dealing with diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, mental health of employees, remote working, flexible work practice. All of these things were sort of different priorities for different organizations. And really, what we were sort of saying is, you know something, they all come together under one thing, and that's health. And that kind of surprised a lot of organizations. And they sort of said, okay, well, does that simplify it then? So instead of trying to select what are our priorities for this year, we can actually bring everything together, measure, monitor, and manage the health of our workplace and our workforce. And that really is the key to this. So the book, as I said, it's a why to, how to guide. And the important thing about being a why to guide is because there's a big societal thing going on, Spiros, which I think people will be aware of. If you look at government expenditure all over the world, it has shot up. The amount of money that governments are spending on the health of their people is colossal, and it's also increasing. And that's taking money away from other things like education and social supports and the like. And that's even excluding the spend on the pandemic, even ahead of that. And there's been lots of queues in hospitals all over the world. The demand is pretty insatiable. So the question is, what will happen? Because the demographics also aren't particularly good. A lot of people are, getting older, living longer, which is great, but they're experiencing ill health. And the fearful thing that a lot of people feel is that, we could be faced in a situation where it's only the wealthy will be able to be healthy. And that's something we absolutely want to avoid. So the book very clearly calls out this problem. And it basically says that the answer is in the next biggest grouping in society, which is workplaces. And the ask is for leaders in those workplaces to step forward and say, well, listen, at least my people under my care in this organization are actually healthy. So they're not going to be hitting the hospitals as often as if they were unhealthy. Another aspect that I think is really important is Nuria Chinchilla from a university in Barcelona has put forward a concept called social pollution. And basically what she says is that organizations who environmentally polluted previously, governments would tell them to stop and they just ignore them. Whereas when they started to fine them, well, then they started to clean up their act. And she thinks it's going to be the same for employers who are bad employers, who squeeze people and in some cases destroy people, and then expect the health services of the world to pick up the pieces. And she doesn't think that's sustainable. And she believes that eventually this health services are going to track back where these people used to work, and they're going to start finding those organizations. Now, obviously, we don't want to get to a stage where organizations are being fined for being, poor workplaces and negatively impacting people's health. So ahead of that, there's a much more positive way to deal with this and to motivate organizations on this journey. So rather than get to a case of finding it, it's actually helping organizations to understand what does it take to be a healthy place to work. And that's
So
really
just
what
to
this.
interrupt a bit, there are a lot of things that you have to come into consideration to come up with this great book. So just to give an idea what the next minutes are about for our guests, the things that we are about to discuss and that you just started is about what a healthy place to work is. What are the data that can provide us that are the key to success? How to create a healthy place to work and why leadership is crucial. Awesome. So thank you and sorry for the interruption. Let's start with what a healthy place to work looks like nowadays.
Sure. So there's two parts to being a healthy place to work, and I think that's really important to say. It's made up of healthy people and a healthy organization. So both aspects of that are really important. And that's why the mission of what we're about as an organization is to transform the lives of millions of people across the globe, to make work healthy, make workers healthier, and make workplaces healthier. And I think we need people to understand that what we're actually trying to achieve with a healthy place to work is resilient, sustainable, high performing organizations. And that's the big why that we're talking about here. What we've brought together is a model and methodology that draws on a range of research and theories in fields as diverse as psychology, neuroscience, sociology, anthropology, economics, health, medicine, management, and leadership. So it's extremely broad. And this is the big philosophy that we believe in, that you can't actually be a healthy organization if you're full of unhealthy individuals. And you can't be a healthy individual if you work in an unhealthy organization. So the key to this is to create a healthy organization full of healthy individuals. And this is also about managing risk. And I think, people watching this today need to understand that and ensuring sustainability into the future. So the data that I'll come to in a moment actually gives you a little bit of a sense of what's actually going to happen in the future in your organization. So it's like a canary in the coal mine that gets a sense of what's going on before it becomes toxic for the organization, giving you an opportunity to actually make changes in time. And this is very much linked to the UN sustainability goals around ensuring healthy lives and promoting well-being at all ages. That's the number 3, good health and well-being. And number 8, decent work and economic growth. And also plays into the ESG, the environmental, social, and governance, very much on the S piece here. And this is about taking that S piece really seriously. So when we say what is a healthy place to work, a healthy place to work is one that really takes this seriously. And I'll give you a quick example of that. There's an organization called ISS. They employ 360,000 people and they're headquartered in Denmark. They supply facilities management services to organizations all over the world. And I was with them recently, and under the social sustainability piece, they've made 3 serious commitments to their people. And I think it's worth discussing them just to show exactly what it is to be a healthy place to work and take the health and well-being of your people incredibly seriously. So number 1, they have committed to paying the living wage. Now, they gave an example that in where they have offices in India, paying the living wage actually meant doubling what people are paid. So doubling what they're paid. And this is in an industry that has really, really low margins. So the question is, how do you actually manage to do that? And what they did was they worked with the organizations who are big organizations that they supply services for. And those organizations were experiencing 80% attrition levels. And they said, if we increase the pay of people and we double it, what will that do to your attrition levels? And they actually measured it, and they found when they doubled people's wages in India, that attrition fell to under 10%. The costs saving for them more than paid for the increase in the pay. So that's a wonderful story of where investing in people to make the workplace healthier so that they're paid a living wage is really important. The second piece, they actually take on 120,000 people every single year. And they know that a lot of these people, 80% of them, this is their first job ever. So for those people, they've made a commitment that they're going to have 100,000 people with a level of qualification by 2025. So they're going to educate those people to give them that lift so that they take them from their first job. These can be refugees and the like. They give them some level of qualification that allows them then go up in social mobility. I think that's really important. And the last area, which is again really important, is this idea that they found that a lot of their employees are maybe cleaners in organizations, security people and the like, and they didn't feel respected. So they're running a huge campaign to actually make people understand what an important role that is. These are the frontline workers that got us through COVID. And these people really should be respected by absolutely everybody. That's what it is in reality to be a healthy place to work, where an organization and its leadership take this critically seriously. And they understand the importance of delivering on this for people, making work healthy for them. So when we go into organizations, oftentimes people have this idea that, oh, well, we do invest in health and well-being. And what we actually noticed was when we analyzed what they do, it's very much led by HR. Oftentimes it's about awareness building, and the measures that they put in place can be very ad hoc, short-term, a little bit tick box and superficial, and definitely very tactical. They can run things to do with an event that's, you know, on a particular day, an international day of X, Y, or Z. Things they do can be very programmatic and oftentimes very siloed, and it's all about making the employer brand look good and focused on maybe trying to lower sickness, accidents, and absenteeism. So what we found is, if you want to be a healthy place to work, what this needs is a big shift. You need to really believe that this is about sustainable organizational performance. It needs to be led by the CEO, right? And the C-suite need to be passionate about this, and they need to understand it. They need to be able to speak about it, and they need to understand how it relates to the performance of the organization itself. And the C-suite need to be role models for healthy behaviors. This is really about capacity building within the organization, and this is moving away from short-term to long-term. It's moving away from away from tactical to strategic. This is about a long-term investment. It's about designing up the systems in your organization to make sure that they make work healthy. So if people are getting burnt out in their job, it's not about giving them an app like Calm or Headspace. That's only, dealing with the symptom. What they need to do is get to the root cause, and they need to redesign the job to make sure that it is sustainable and that people don't get constantly burnt out. This is also about the culture of the organization and making sure that the culture is a culture where it's easier to be well than not. And this is the critical piece here, is about data. It's about having the data, so you're not just relying on your gut feeling about how people are doing just through random conversations, but you're giving people an opportunity to systematically and structured answer certain statements to find out how exactly are my people. So, leaders, CEOs, they care passionately about the revenue of the organization. They care definitely about performance metrics, they care about EBITDA, they care about profit and all of those things, they will have numbers for. If they really care about the health and well-being of their people, they need also to have numbers and data so that they can turn around and say, I know it now. I need to measure it, I need to monitor it, and I need to manage it all the way through. So this is about moving the dial in workforce health. And it's focused on organizational performance, sustainability, and resilience. So this is, a really big shift in organizations. Some organizations do very little with regard to workforce health. Others do lots of stuff. But the question is it landing? Is it actually, are they focused on the wrong things? And are they just kind of taking a little bit of a broad machine gun approach, where what they really need to do is focus and really target all of their efforts on the things that matter most to the people? That's what being a healthy place to work really means. The individual needs to be able to flourish in an environment that's good for them, that delivers real energy to them. And the organization itself needs to deliver on their objectives in a really sustainable manner. So one of the things that we talk about with regard to the model that we use for Healthy Place to Work is salutogenesis. And this is a concept that was developed by Aaron Antonovsky. And basically, Aaron Antonovsky studied women who were in concentration camps during the war. And what he did was he tracked them afterwards in a longitudinal study to find out whether or not they were able to live anyway normal lives. And what he found was that for most of them, it was impossible to live normal lives. But there was a cohort of 33% who, when you look at it, led pretty normal lives afterwards. And he was intrigued to find out what made those people so incredibly resilient in the face of such horrors. And what he found was that the world was looking at health as the absence of illness. So if I'm not sick, I'm healthy. And what he said was that's a very pathogenic approach to health. And what you do in that situation is you try and avoid disease, you try and reduce risk factors, and it's all about what you don't want and trying to avoid. And it's like during COVID, it's wearing masks, it's staying at home, isolation and the like. It's quite negative. Whereas what he found was that these women who were successful and resilient didn't have this sort of pathogenic approach. They had a salutogenic approach, which is they understood what were the things that made them really, really healthy, and they focused on becoming stronger in those areas. So that's stronger physically, mentally, socially, emotionally, and spiritually. And this is really important in terms of them actually managing to manage through life. For him, he always tells the story where, somebody's walking by a river and suddenly they see somebody drowning and they go to save that person. And then suddenly there's somebody else drowning. And again, they go in and save them, and they keep doing it. And until somebody says, why don't you go up the river to find out why people are throwing themselves in? So that's very much a preventative medical approach to this. But what he says, Aaron Antonovsky says, everybody's in the river. We're all in the river. So to some degree, we're all struggling in this life. And the only question is, can we swim, and how well can we swim? And if you think about that river, there's part of that river that leads to a waterfall, which in life is unfortunately where we die. And some people are born really close to that waterfall, and every single day of their life, they're swimming really hard just to stay afloat and to not drown. Some others are a little bit further away from that, and they can have moments of calm in their life, right? And I think I tried to just show it here, a nice moment of calm. But then, sometimes in our life, we get these moments of kind of, it gets a bit rocky for us, okay? And then there can be moments in our life where there's an absolute tsunami coming at us. And that can be really tough for us, okay? And the art of this is actually being equipped to be able to actually manage through those moments in our life. And this is where I just talk about what Antonovsky sees as something critically important for individuals and in turn for organizations. And that's having a deep sense of coherence. And he describes that as a sense that life is comprehensible, manageable, and meaningful. So what does that mean? Well, it means when, there's a sense that some people have that your life is fine and then you hit stressful moments. And the question is, how do you deal with them? But for Antonovsky, he says, we're on a spectrum from ease to dis-ease. So we're all under stress all the time, But a lot of us, hopefully, are actually managing that stress that we have in the life. And it can be a good thing to get you going and get you achieving your goals. And sometimes we hit peak stress. And the question is, how do we deal with peak stress in our life? And that's that sense that when those moments happen that are very stressful, can we get our head around what's actually happening, what's going on? That's the comprehensibility piece. Can we actually understand what's happening, why it's happening, and predict how it's going to play out in the future? The second piece is about manageability. So do I have a resource of resilience around me in terms of the people who maybe when I'm stressed and I'm not thinking straight will actually think for me? And can they support me? And that can also mean from a financial point of view, can I be supported through those really difficult times? And if it's a life event, do I have people who can help me understand what's going on? And the final thing is that piece of meaningfulness that, life is a struggle. So the question is it worth it? And do I have a sense of meaning in what I'm doing every single day that makes my life meaningful? That's really, really important. And as he says, it's the ability to function in the face of changes in themselves and their relationship with the environment. So the truth of it is, a workplace is constantly changing. Every single day you go into that workplace, people are older, they're more experienced, different things have happened. So this is an actual complex system of energy. And that's really the way you have to think about it. So you have to understand what's going on every single day, measuring it, monitoring it, and actually managing that process so that you can be effective as an organization. And if you look at trying to create a sense of coherence as an organization, what leaders need to do is think about this comprehensibility, manageability, and meaningfulness. They need to share with people what's happening because they often have more information about where the organization is going and the challenges it faces and the like. Sharing that information helps people get their head around what's going on. But they also can get a source of data from the organization as to what are people really struggling with. And at the moment, it's quite clear from our data that, people are struggling financially and they're worried about their finances. Day to day, it can be really hard. I was talking to the CEO of DHL Express in Europe, and he said, for them, one of the most important rewards and recognition programs that they can run is actually giving people a hot meal to bring home to their families in the evening. That's what people are dealing with in a lot of low-paid jobs right now. So being able to help people manage through those really difficult, challenging moments. And then finally, it's about giving people a sense of hope and meaning and a sense that their role, their job, what they do on a constant basis is meaningful and is really worthwhile and delivering to them. So as we say, the deep sense of coherence is about comprehensibility, manageability, and meaningfulness. And this is about becoming physically, mentally, socially, emotionally, and spiritually stronger as an individual. Because there is those, as I said, to be healthy place to work, you have to understand there's two sides to this. The individuals have to be healthy, and that's within their remit. Organizations can support them, but it's my job to turn up to work physically, mentally, socially, emotionally, and spiritually healthy. But then on the other side, we have to make sure that the systems in work, the culture, the practices, the policies, the systems, the policies, all of those are supporting me to be healthy and delivering sustainable work. When those processes aren't working, they need to be fixed. If the culture isn't right, if the practices aren't right, if the systems, if the behaviors aren't right, they need to be fixed. And that's the art of getting feedback from your people as to whether or not they're working. And actually, when you find that things aren't working, that you fix them so that you actually are creating this healthy place to work. So the model that we actually use here is really important because it covers off all of those things. We talk about 4 different pillars. We talk about purpose, mental resilience, connection, and physical health. So under purpose, what we're providing data on is whether or not people actually believe that the culture in the organization is one that supports wellness. We look at Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's work on flow. Flow is this ultimate level of performance where you're in the right role, doing the right job at the right time, but you're challenged, but you actually are so intensely invested in the work you do that you lose sense of time. Now, after doing that work, you actually feel a great sense of personal achievement and you really feel you're contributing, and that's important. So the gratitude piece comes from understanding that you found your purpose in life, you found the right place for your skills sets, And when we find organizations where there's a mismatch between the people who are in that organization and what they're doing in the organization itself and the culture and the purpose and the leadership, there's a lack of coherence and lack of alignment. That's when problems occur. And that's where we find conflict in organizations. And finally, we talk about under purpose, we talk about the values and whether they've been lived in the organization, and also whether or not people believe the organization is, a caring organization, whether the leaders actually care and are role models for healthy behaviors. The second piece is around mental resilience. And we talk about learning mindset, which is critically important with organizations going through so much change on a constant basis, that if you don't believe that you can change as an individual by learning and growing and adapting, you're going to fight that change, and that's going to lead to conflict. And again, conflict in relationships and organizations is where it becomes really unhealthy. The financial well-being I mentioned, people worried about that. It's really important that we measure that and find out how big a problem is it and how can we support people. Self-efficacy is Albert Bandura's work. This is around sort of people with high levels of self-efficacy actually believe that their decisions really matter. They have personal agency, and particularly in the remit of job, career, and health. People with low levels of self-efficacy tend to just believe life is happening to them and they have little say. Self-efficacy and high levels of self-efficacy is highly correlated to high performance in workplace. We look at work control, and we know that it's really important that people have a level of autonomy in their work. I mean, I think few people like to be micromanaged unless you're really new into a role and you don't have much understanding of that role and you're happy for somebody to tell you what to do. But most people like to have a level of autonomy, and we see job crafting as being really important here, where you sit down with your organization and your manager and you shape a new role. So you sort of decide what you'll work on, where you'll work, when you'll work, how you'll work, who you'll work with. So you really create a role that works for you and for the organization. And that flexibility has been really helpful. And working from at home and the like has been really helpful for people who maybe have disabilities, who that, coming into the workplace has been a problem before, but even flexibility around people who have work family commitments and the like, and maybe are happy enough to pick up their kids from school and then, work in the evenings. So making sure that we're not tied to a 9 to 5. Now, I know some people are tied to that, but if there's an opportunity to give people a bit more control over the work they do, that's useful. And work demands. So are people overwhelmed in your workplace? Is there a sense of burnout happening or a fear of it? Or are they bored that there are not enough demands? So it's really trying to get the balance in between. And a great manager will actually know what your talents are and your skills and your capacity, and will set your demands just at the level that is just there so that you're really working to the right capacity. Connection is really social well-being, which is everything from manager support, a sense of belonging, that you really do belong in this organization and you intend to stay, and that, a simple case of some other organization offering slightly more money isn't going to actually just pull you away from this organization, that you're sort of saying, there's more than money that's keeping me here. And that's kind of the culture, the people, the relationships. And relationships, again, are really important. We test for that because we know that it's not about me being able to run a marathon. If my relationships are broken, I'll be broken as a person. So relationships are really important. They're the glue that keep people together in organizations. And when people retire from organizations, oftentimes it's the relationships they really miss, the social support that they miss, and they become slightly isolated. So peer support, in that sense that, there are people behind me who are going to really support me. And particularly when I need a dig out every now and again, they're there for me and I'll be there for them. That's important. Social well-being is everything from if you want to volunteer and, CSR activities outside of work and the like, but it's also the organization being able to lobby on behalf of their employees, maybe for better housing, better transport, safer communities and the like, and good education systems and the like. Diversity and inclusion, really important. It's important that your workplace is diverse and that people can feel included, and regardless of who they are and what they are, that they're able to be authentic, because many people, unfortunately, in the past have been hiding in workplaces who they really are. And emotional expression, emotions are, really fantastic. They are what we are. We're emotional people, but it's important that we're able to keep our emotions in check, and that we're able to, I think, have literacy around our emotional set. Many people are actually probably operating with an emotional set of maybe 10 or 15 words, whereas there's like about 200, 300 words that describe the emotions that individuals have. The more tailored and the more focused we can get on being able to name and label the particular emotion we're experiencing, the more we can manage those negative ones. And responsibility comes in there, because we, when there's a situation, we have the ability to respond in a particular way. And sometimes it's really important that that's not an overly emotional response, but it's equally important that people can be themselves in a workplace and express how they feel. The last area is the physical health. This is everything from work environment and safety. This is about energy, rest, recovery. This is about fitness, and, you know, is the organization making it easier for me to have healthy options, or is it just full of vending machines with high sugar drinks and high sugar foods, which are not going to be great if I'm not taking them as part of a balanced diet. So what we're doing is we're presenting this as a model that'll give you clarity as to whether or not you've got a healthy workplace. And the data piece we talk about is really important, because what we've got then, we bring all this together as all the individuals together as your workforce, and we give you a sense of, these are the scores on a Likert scale, from 1 where people aren't particularly healthy to 5 where they're very healthy. So you're trying to move these data points from the 1s to 2s to 3s to 4s to 5s, so left to right. And on the other side, you've got the organizational health status. This is everything around culture, value, support, safety, demands, inclusion, social well-being, and learning. And here you're going in the opposite direction. So you're going to go from the right to the left and move those 1s to 2s to 3s to 4s to 5s. And this is the power of actually having this lens to look at your workplace. And the data piece that's really important is we present that data to you as an organization, and we tell you what you're really good at, and we tell you the areas that maybe you need to work on. And moving those data points to the center is where it's a sustainable, resilient, high-performing organization. And not leaving this down to gut feeling or a sense or whatever, actually been able to have data points that give you evidence so that you can respond to the specific issues that are affecting your people right now, today. And then we talk about leadership in this, because this is really important. This is how you create a healthy place to work. You respond to all of these things, but leaders often say, you see these things on the left-hand side here, energy, rest, physical fitness, like these are the individuals, that's their responsibility. And the truth is, that is their responsibility. But you as an organization need to be aware if these things are low, because that's going to affect the performance of the individuals who turn into the organization every single day. So if you can support them in some way to improve their sleep, to improve their diet, to improve their fitness, to improve those things, that will make a difference to the performance of those people in your organization, and mean that those people are healthier coming in. And if you're around healthier people, it's easier to be healthier. And then on the other side, if you make sure that the systems and the process and the practice and the values are much better, this is your responsibility as an organization to make sure that those things are right. You then move the whole organization into the center to a healthy place to work. And leadership, again, we've provided a lot of data in terms of this. Leadership is really important. And it's not a case of leaders turning up to do a photo opportunity or make a speech to say this is great. It's actually, how do they operate every single day? Are they role models for healthy behaviors? Do they call out really poor behaviors when they see them in the organization and say, we're not going to accept that? Do they make sure that they look after the tone, the shadow that is set from the height of the CEO suite? Do they make sure that the climate in the organization is one that's not toxic, but really good and healthy? And that's really important, that leadership role. And it's really clear to us. There's one statement which says, do I believe that the senior leaders in this organization actually care about my health and well-being? If that's a really, really strong response from your employees, as in they believe that the leaders care, well, then the individuals also care, and they're much more positive on things to do with leadership and performance and in general productivity. Whereas if they actually believe that the leaders don't care about their health and well-being, well, then they in turn don't necessarily care about the organization. So it's a really, really important thing that leaders need to understand what it takes to be a healthy place to work. And that's really simple, because they can read our Science of Wellbeing, which is available at healthyplacetowork.com. It's free. You can download it right now if you're a leader, and you can see exactly what needs to happen to go on this journey to create a healthy place to work. But they also need to live and breathe it every single day and be those role models for healthy behaviors. And that makes a huge difference to the performance of the organization. So, I mean, you know, we've got these healthy workplaces all over the world, and it's really inspiring to see the organizations and what they're doing. You know, you look at an organization like Futurists in Finland, where they actually found that the biggest problem for their people was some really difficult clients. And those clients were too difficult, so much so that they actually decided to fire some clients. And now when they're engaging with clients, they hand the clients a rule book and they say, this is how we'll operate with you. And we ask you to operate in this way with us. If you don't want to operate in that way, we don't want you as a client. So they're really clear. They've prioritized the health and well-being of their people. And this is important because, you know, for them, they also analyzed what type of work do their people like doing. And they asked their salespeople to sell more projects like that. So that's a slightly different approach. One pharmaceutical organization that we were actually dealing with, again, the data that came back said their people were really aligned, really focused on the purpose and the meaning of what the organization does and delivers on a constant basis. But a number of them were thinking of leaving the organization. And the reason was because the level of demand that was placed on them was just too great. So for them, that was about reprioritizing the asks that were coming down from the board. And actually the organization at board level suddenly realized, okay, we're going to have to ease off here and we're going to have to reprioritize. It's not a case that we're not going to do the stuff. We're just going to do it over a longer term period. And for a lot of organizations who are, you know, working quarter to quarter, that can be a pressure cooker for people, and they need to understand the effect that that actually has on people in their organizations. But it is really inspiring when you actually see, I mean, next week, we're actually certifying BT Ireland for the 5th year in a row. So that's the first organization to hit that target of 5 years, a healthy place to work. And you see organizations like Salesforce there, like Accenture in Mexico, and we're in Brazil and Sweden, and we're going live next week in Lithuania. And even the police force in Dubai are officially a healthy place to work. So it makes us really proud. So to be a healthy place to work, you need to make sure that your people are healthy and the systems and practices and processes in the organization are healthy. It needs to be data-driven so that you have the information, that you can actually have an evidence base to say, these are the things that are affecting our people, and you need then to be committed to resolving those issues for those people. And leadership is absolutely key critical to ensuring that those leaders understand what this is all about, because everybody in the organization needs to understand what a healthy place to work is. And they need to understand that everybody in the organization plays a critical role in creating a healthy place to work. So this isn't the responsibility of HR. This isn't the responsibility of solely of the CEO of the organization. This is a joint responsibility. And in the best case scenario, to create that healthy place to work, it's about building a plan and everybody owning that plan and everybody moving together in a collaborative way forward to deliver on that plan on a constant basis. And I suppose I often just finish by showing this, and I sort of say that could be your organization right now, where there's only a little bit of energy and maybe a couple of people are buzzing and there's very few lights actually on. And if I was competing, I'd like to compete against an organization like that. Whereas if you actually dedicate your time and effort and energy into creating a healthy place to work, well, the chances are it'll be more like this. People will be absolutely buzzing. They'll be full of energy. They'll be focused. They'll be determined. They'll be performing. They'll be collaborative. They'll be creative, and they'll be productive. And that's the organization. I wouldn't like to be competing against that organization. And that's a healthy place to work. So Spiros, hopefully that has helped to explain a little bit about what it is to be a healthy place to work, how data is important, how to go about creating it, and the role that leadership has in making that happen.
That was great, nice. But John,
Yes.
we are waiting for the questions from the people who are watching us right now. Let me come with some clarifications. And normally with conversation that I had in the previous days, just to also inform our guests that this webinar is let's say, pronunciation about your cooperation and on try to put the healthy place to work in Greece and Cyprus. So having talks with business owners and decision makers both in Greece and Cyprus, there were some questions. So I will start with those. First of all, the first thing that I had to discuss quite often was that, okay, if I am the organization or the company and I have to take care of their meals, their sleep, and all those great things that you previously described in your presentation, this will create an additional cost. What at the end, what is the difference comparing this cost on what the organization will lost if will not take actions on that direction?
Yeah, so the reality is that it generally isn't a cost. So if you want to just teach people how to sleep better, if you find out that that's a presenting issue, you can go onto our website where there's on Spotify, you can get our podcast called Work Healthy. And there's an hour-long session with Dr. Els van der Helm talking about sleep and how to sleep better. So this isn't about spending a lot of money. This is about targeting your resources on the things that really matter to people. And that's the beauty of this. You know, in a lot of cases, like if you find that people are struggling financially, what we actually found was organizations would get their own accountants in and actually sit with people. And they found that a lot of people were on credit card debt, paying huge interest rates. And those, just through good advice, they put them onto medium-term loans, which were bringing down the interest rates that they were actually paying. They also helped them in terms of, tax clinics, running tax clinics just to let people know what things they could be saving money on and paying less tax. And those things were in place for the years to come. So this isn't about spending lots of money. I don't want anybody to think that. This is generally about behaviors, and this is about information and education. And that's not to say, like if you have an unhealthy workplace, a physical environment that's pretty depressing or the like, you might have to spend a bit of money doing up your workplace to make it a bit more interesting, a bit more colorful, a bit more attractive to people and the like. So things can cost money, but in general, this is about behaviors and this is about education.
That's nice. How much time does an organization need to fix everything on those that show us in the slide of your presentation?
Yeah, like honestly, there's no answer to that because it completely depends on what's going on in the organization. Some organizations, they go through the process and they're already a healthy place to work, and we just certify them, and that allows them attract and retain talent and go into the marketplace and be seen as a great employer. But others, they have a lot of problems, and it then takes time to actually, it could take anything to 3 years for them to actually go through a process of resolving the issues that they actually have. Because sometimes there might be bullies in that organization, and there's processes that have to go through, to make people behave in a different way. And sometimes they never change, so therefore they have to be exited from the organization. So things like that can actually take a little bit of time.
Awesome. Do all the facts and the data you shared apply to every country and every culture?
Yeah, it's the model has been tested and it's universal. The things that we're measuring are universally applicable to people. They care about them. That's not to say that there aren't differences. The benchmarks change from country to country. So I suppose it's like also values in different organizations, in different cultures. Sometimes, in some countries, independence can be a really important value. Normally the Nordics are quite like that. In some countries like China, it's very much community comes first. In places like the US, it can be very individualistic. And in South America and the like, it can be very much family. It's the priority. So it's really interesting to see how things change. But the things we're measuring, you know, it's universal to sleep. It's universal to be worried about your finances. And it's universal to want to be respected in an organization too.
All right. The next one is direct to my friend and student Anai that is with us today. That is coming from the maritime sector. And the question is, do also this apply in multicultural environments like on the ships?
I mean, more to the point, in multicultural environments, because that's where the things like diversity and inclusion are tested most. Because, you know, if you're in a workplace and everybody is just like you, well, then it's easier for you to get on with people because everybody sees the world the same way you do. But put yourself in a situation where you're around people who are different to you, and there is a potential here for, you know, people to see conflict and relationships can suffer. So there's an education piece that has to understand where people are coming from, understand different cultures, understand how people behave differently, and respect that and be tolerant of that within a workplace, and have basic values and principles that have to be adhered to make sure that nobody gets bullied or excluded or the like. And it has to be somewhere that's mentally healthy for everybody.
Thank you. And the last one. By the time that an organization will come up with these changes in culture, will it affect stakeholders, shareholders, suppliers, and buyers?
You know, I mean, from experience of the organizations have done this, other companies in their ecosystem are really intrigued because they're kind of going, oh, what's a healthy place to work? And straight away they're seen as being innovative, and they're seen as kind of getting a jump ahead of the marketplace because they quite clearly, passionately believe in this. And it asks questions, and the stakeholders and the board and all of those people, it's really important because they need to get with the program too. So the board of an organization needs to understand what this is all about. And that's one of the things I'd say to organizations, make sure that they do, you know, and they like having that data flow from the organization itself. That's really important for them.
Awesome. John, thank you very, very much. So just for our guests and the people who will watch the recording later after, just to inform you that we are already on the procedure to certify the first organization in Greece as a healthy place to work. For anyone else that is interesting to learn more about how this program and this certification can add value to your organization and to your employees, please don't hesitate to contact directly to me and Bailout Human Synthesis. If there are any other questions from our participants, John, thank you very much. And something for the closing of this great presentation and webinar.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity too. It's been wonderful, and I really want the opportunity to get to Greece and to Cyprus. So hopefully you'll have lots of organizations that'll want to be certified. And obviously, you know, the book is a great starting point. It's available, as I said, to, you know, on Amazon and the like. Make Work Healthy. It just gives you a nice sense of overall how to go about this and why it's so important.
Just for your information, you, John, and for our viewers, all the details and the link to have access to the book will be down to the description of the video or the podcast episode too. Okay, and sure, we can also provide you further information on whatever you need according on how to create a healthy place to work. Thank you all for being here. It was a great privilege for being with you for 1 hour at least. And I'm really looking forward to see you also, John, in Greece and in Cyprus.
Great. Look forward to it. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Bye-bye.